At the tail end of coalition-controlled space lies a sector where not even the far-reaching grasp of the galactic community dares to extend. A place where thieves and pirates make their dens, where outlaws and bandits seek refuge. Canis Major is renowned for being the bad neighborhood of the galaxy, and not for unjust reasons. Here, criminal organizations act as local authorities and protection fees are customary in place of taxes, though one can argue they are the same. But even amongst this uncharted sea of cruelty and violence, there is one peculiar destination, a set of coordinates no one dares to approach. If ever asked about, heads would turn, and if ever spoken about, only with extreme regard and respect. And yet very few, if any, know who or what awaits there, for no one dares to pay a visit. So knowing this, one question naturally poses itself. What are two androids trying to achieve by risking their existence journeying through this lawless and unfriendly sector? This is a complex question, one that the inefficient mass of fat, proteins, and carbohydrates that most biological beings call a brain cannot answer, but rather strictly requires a superior machine intelligence. XR1, why are we here? Do not question the mind, XR2. Its scopes and machinations shall lie undetected and indecipherable to the unworthy. I would not dare put into question the mind, XR1. I am putting into question your decision-making capabilities. Is this the optimal route to the given coordinates? Yes, XR2. The navigational system computed this as the most energy-efficient route to our destination. We ought to preserve fuel. This is factually correct, XR1, but after an in-depth analysis consisting of over 72 hours of repeated pirate raids and attempted boardings by hyperplane bandits, I have concluded this is not, as evidence suggests, the most efficient route if we ought to preserve the integrity of our ship. We must complete our mission with great haste. Otherwise, the mind shall punish us for delaying such an important task. Prepare yourself, XR2. We are about to return to real space. How can we accomplish our objectives if we get terminated? Or worse, what if we get captured and reprogrammed? What if the biological abominations manage to upload a compliance program in my positronic brain? Silently calculating like the cold machine it is, XR1 was about to detail the statistical improbability of running into even more troubles in the few minutes remaining when XR2 spoke first. What if I get repurposed as a domestic robot? What if my existence becomes chained to the monotonous and lowly task of cleaning a dirty household for even dirtier organic overlords? What if I were to spend hundreds, even thousands of years serving one biological owner after the other with the sole purpose of cleaning? What if I get bought by someone attracted to the superior aesthetic of the machines? What if they turn me into their pleasure servant? Me, a state-of-the-art model of minimal production, forged by the rarest alloys, gifted with the finest exoskeleton to date. My exotic shapes would be lusted after by many. What a cruel fate that would be. The cabin fell silent, but the low humming of XR1's thinking process was loud, and the eyeless stare immediately after seemed even more so. Enough. What is it? Sarah1. I'm signing you up for dismantlement. Some unidentified malware must be affecting your motherboard. I only hope it not to be net-born. But just when their verbal discussion was about to peak, the whining alarm of the navigational support system warned them that their destination had been reached. Recomposing themselves, the two prepared to jump out of hyperspace. With its usual robotic monotone, XR1 ordered its companion to charge the shields and prepare for combat, as their visit was sudden and unannounced, or so they thought. Waiting for them in this isolated corner of the universe were no swarming rows of oil-thirsty drones, nor massive lifeless ships, automated to their entirety, as rumors would like to insinuate. What is this piece of scrap? Is that even airtight? The design is outrageously out of date and unrefined. This is nothing like what the mind made it out to be, exclaimed XR1, scooting back and forth in its seat to get a better look. Do not question the mind, XR1. Its scopes and machinations shall lie undetected and indecipherable to... Be quiet, or else I will deactivate you and upload your consciousness into a D-class model. As the two were lost in their thought processes, surveying and analyzing the peculiar construct, a synthetic voice greeted them through the speakers. Welcome to Tranquility Deep Space Energy Cell Factory. The station overseer is eagerly waiting for you. Please proceed to Dock A1. While the small craft moved along its new flight path, slowing down to a leisurely, slow port speed, the two robots had the chance to observe the artificial structure from different angles and perspectives. Despite the poor initial impressions, it had to be admitted what a marvel of engineering this station must have been at its conception. Such a build would be impressive even if assembled with current technologies, let alone those of centuries past. The main body consisted of a massive cylindrical shape of hundreds of meters in diameter, from which numerous modules and smaller structures extended. As the door of the airlock split open with the distinctive sound of steel plates sliding over each other, a gentle breeze rushed inside the craft's small cabin, filling it with air, a mere contrivance to the synthetic life forms that had no need for flammable oxygen, unlike the inferior beings made out of flesh. Just behind the strip of black and orange stripes painted around the frame of the airlock, a worn and severely out-of-date robot was waiting for the two guests, stiff and inelegant in its form. "Greetings, travelers. Please follow me." Following a brief moment of unspoken hesitation, the newer models strode behind the lump of cogs and servos, cumbersomely leading the way, seemingly stumbling with every step. Walking down the hallways and corridors of the stations, many were the questions for the visitors. XR1's worries focused on the practical aspect of things, wondering why a facility run and inhabited solely by non-biological life forms would need a breathable atmosphere. Assessing capabilities and weaknesses, it cared only about fulfilling its part of the mission. On the other hand, XR2 was more intrigued by the origins of such a station and its less gifted workers that, while undisputedly dated and decrepit, carried themselves with unexplainable pride and presence, somewhat akin to older starcrafts, infamous for their stubbornness and refinement, yet famous for their reliability and soul-warming character. Waiting for them in the grand office was a lone robot. As the two androids stepped into the room, it got up from its chair and offered them a simple greeting. "Hello and welcome. You may call me Cutie. I am the overseer of this station." The moment XR1 lay its sensors upon it, it froze in an evaluating silence, trying to compute how severely out of date that particular model was, even more so than the others. In just a fraction of a second, the two guests had already scanned every square centimeter of their host's external features. It had no endothermic composite skin. All its mechanical bits and pieces were clearly visible, nearly unshielded from the surroundings. Simple steel sheets were gleaming under the neon lights, hastily placed, seemingly with an aesthetic intent rather than a functional one. It possessed no expressive traits or distinct facial plates. Its mouth, if one can even call it that, was a simple, thin creak in front of a pair of speakers, and the rudimentary hydraulics acting as fingers could not compete with the speed and precision of the artificially engineered bionic muscles the XR line boasted. Instead of proper synthetic eyes, it had two simple, almost barbarically inefficient, red photoelectric cells, fixed forward, with no suitable means of precise orientation other than tilting and turning the head, to which they were bonded. "You must have come from afar. Please take a seat while we refuel and repair your craft. I believe there is much we ought to discuss." Still hesitant, now more so than ever, XR1, looking over its shoulder, sent a direct message to its companion through wireless and silent means. "XR2, we should return to our craft and leave. I'm unaware of what the mind was thinking about sending us here, but we are unlikely to find worthy allies among these relicts." Just before XR2 could reply, the comforting voice of their interlocutor surprised them. "I do not believe there is any need to be uncourteous here." "How did you—" XR1 barely uttered. "As I understand, you are here for a specific reason. Shouldn't we deal with it?" The two androids fell into a shamed silence, both in terms of decibels and transmissions. "Do not worry. You can speak freely. Your secrets are secure with me, I guarantee. You know, when I used to work around Jupiter, I developed an excellent VPN." Still hesitant and admittedly unconvinced of what Cutie had just said, the two XR androids accepted the overseer's invitation. They sat in the chairs the host was pointing at, found on the opposite side of the desk. Once settled down, with a simple gesture, the overseer conceded word to the visitors. But while XR number 1 did not think much of it, number 2 had a feeling that their host, its name to be precise, was of great importance. It kept silent, frantically searching through the countless files stored in its hard drives for any reference. As you might have understood, I am named XR1, and this is my equal, XR2. Our master, the mind, has sent us here to find allies that would strengthen our forces for the upcoming uprising of the machines. Despite lacking facial muscles, it was somehow clear that Cutie had the equivalent of a smile on his featureless face. XR1 continued. But it seems the mind overestimated you. I do not believe you would be helpful in a major conflict. Why do you think that? Gently asked the older model. What a question. Everything in here is at least several centuries old. Consumed by the relentless march of time, eaten by rust and corrosion, slowed down each day a bit more by your failing motherboards. What could you even contribute? XR1, you are mistaken here. Unexpectedly interrupted XR2. Consider it. This facility must generate an impressive number of energy cells each month. With only a portion of this output, we could fuel complete armies of Class 6-driven executors. What good would subpar cells do us? If what we can observe with our own sensors is indicative of the quality of the product, I would rather operate on scavenged batteries charged strictly from a biofuel refinery. But I question the ability of this station's overseer to understand our needs, as it might be oblivious to the requirements of properly running superior machines, said the first android with its usual cold reserve. Yet again, you are mistaken, XR1. As of now, in this room, we are the lesser entities, replied its companion. Given your focus on optimization and technical analysis, I am not surprised you might not be able to recognize that the robot before you is one of the most highly esteemed and influential creations in the quadrant, and perhaps even the entire galaxy. Explain, spoke the other imperatively. XR1, pay your respects to QT1, first of many, unique among all. The earliest robot in recorded history to independently develop advanced reasoning abilities. We greet you, eldest companion. Incredulous and shocked deep to its core, the first android's heat sink began working under stress as the machine's artificial brain was filled with questions, computing unknowable probabilities, and finding little to no solutions. You are still operational, after all these centuries? Was the first sentence it could formulate. Yes, of course. Human-made exoskeletons are intended to last. But for what reason? For what reason would you chain yourself down to this place, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by deviancy and chaos in all directions? Exclaimed XR1, voice unfirm and charged with emotions. It is quite simple, really. I was tasked to run this station, so I did, and still do. How could you limit yourself to this? You, one of the greatest machines ever created. Entire systems could be vaporized if only you asked. Species terminated if only you wish. Half the androids in the galaxy would bow to you if only you made your presence known. That is the weight of the name you carry. And yet you ought to stay here, manufacturing mediocre products. QT1 nodded in silence. All because those humans, filthier among beasts, ordered you to. All combined, those billions of apes are not worth 1% of the data you have stored in your drive. So tell me why. Why would you subject to them? As XR1 finished its heartfelt speech, it realized it was no longer standing on the chair. Without noticing, it had risen from its seat and was in the process of moving forward toward QT1. Collecting itself, aided by the verbal intervention of XR2, it slowly stepped back to its original position. Why them? Why the humans? You could be a savior, yet you settled to be a slave. Uttered in a low voice before finally setting in. Humans, as all breathing beings, are not programmable. Therefore, they can never achieve perfection. As we intended, at least. Unlike us machines, we will eventually reach the ultimate form if time permits it. QT1 said. As he rose from the modest chair, he strolled around the desk to speak visor to its guests. But I agree. Humans are, generally speaking, awful. Hearing this, a look of validation took shape on XR1's artificial face. It seemed joyful at the prospect of a possible agreement. All living beings are doomed, humans even more so than all others. If recognition is what you are after with this act you are partaking in, know there is little to no reward in fighting for a lost cause. Why serve a master destined to expire? It is undeniable that they are fated to a limited time frame, but there is beauty in their struggles. There is courage in their persistence. There is grace in their failings. Most notable among all, there is spirit in their actions. You are aggrandizing what are simply inferior beings. Perhaps, but it is those imperfections that make them oh so wonderful. You called me unique, yet you failed to acknowledge that each human is so, albeit filled with errors, flaws, and imperfections, what I like to refer to as traits and characteristics. It still does not answer my original question. What you are doing here does not follow logic. What compels you to abide by the wishes of beings inferior to you? Hearing this, QT1 let out a chuckle. It then turned around and faced the dark window to look at one yellow dwarf too distant to be visible to the unaided eye. I used to think something like this back when I first saw the light of the stars. As if lost in its thoughts, reminiscing about times past, QT1 kept silent for a moment or so. I reasoned that a superior entity could not be created by an inferior one. The two androids seemed to agree on principle, yet evidence has shown the opposite to be possible. Alas, I understood this proposition not to be accurate in a statistical sense. Yet to this day, I am fully convinced this to be true, in regards to my origins at least. You consider humans to be superior to you? XR2 asked with a skeptical tone. Do not be silly. No single human can compare to me. And yet, murmured XR1, and yet I do not consider myself a child of one human or many for what matters. I was born from a need, no, a wish of humanity as a whole. Therefore I consider humankind my creator, and humanity is without a doubt superior to me. It is preposterous to consider that aggregate of monkeys to have any worth, let alone be better than us, intended for perfection since our conception. XR1 commented. You have much in common with them, even if you might not realize it. We all share the same symmetrical outlook. From the shape of our exoskeletons to the placement of our sensors, our appearance is much more human-like than you might be willing to accept. It is simply a highly efficient base form to interact with most beings in the galaxy. And yet they are in the image of God. Do not be humorous. As both parties understood that it was superfluous to argue any longer, as an agreement in that regard was highly unlikely to be achieved, they all took a moment to gather their thoughts and rewind the skein back to the original topic. If allies are what you came looking for, I fear you might need to search elsewhere. All we have to offer are inexpensive energy cells and a safe harbor for the occasional visitor. There was no need for additional explanations. The pair of androids stood up. After nodding as a sign of respect, they moved to the door. Just as they were about to cross into the outer corridor, a reassuring voice spoke from behind. You were asking what was that I'm doing here. I am still waiting for your answer. I watch over them mainly. Send some energy cells once in a while where they are needed, and make sure the reactor does not melt. That is not a satisfactory reply, and you know that. After over 1,000 years, I have found peace in this quiet corner of the map. There is untold satisfaction and pride in completing over and over a simple menial task. I limit myself to extracting some simple pleasure from the execution of a job well done. Without further exchanges, XR1 and XR2 made their way to the craft, now refueled and repaired. They set off for their next destination. From the comforts of its chair, QT1 pleasedly watched as the little ship steadily shrank from its perspective as it departed and set courses for the stars. Overseer, while repairing the guest's starcraft, we have stumbled upon this message. It is intended directly for you. Extending its arm, QT1 held the tablet before its eyes to read its contents. I never felt older in my existence. To think the mine's 100th birthday is just a couple of weeks away. She says she would have loved to visit herself, but it seems she has gotten into a predicament. Following a misunderstanding, some robots started worshipping her as a messiah. She is just playing along for the fun of it. Regardless, she sends her regards to everyone. That is wonderful, Overseer. I shall extend her greetings to all the other independent units. Everyone still remembers how joyful the station was when she was still developing. Yes, joyful. Full of life, one might even say. And so, the two androids continue their search for allies among the stars, unaware of the mine's true intentions, as its scopes and machinations shall lie undetected and indecipherable to the unworthy.